Dahlia gave up her sight so her sister could travel abroad. But the moment her sister finally made it, she told the world she had no family.
I'm sorry, Dahlia, but Daisy said she never had a sister.
No, it can't be. I'm her sister.
For 3 years, Dahlia waited in darkness, believing help would come. She was wrong. What she didn't know was that her own sister had already erased her. What she did next was something no one saw coming. And the day the truth finally came out, it didn't just break hearts, it stopped a wedding. It all started on what was supposed to be a happy day. Easter break, a simple family picnic. Dahlia and Daisy sat in the back seat, laughing, their parents in front, talking about the future. A future they believed was secure. But on their way home, everything ended. The accident was instant. Metal crushed, glass shattered, and just like that, their parents were gone. Daisy survived with a minor bruise, while Dahlia's world went dark. The accident had damaged both her eyes. There was a surgery that could fix it, but it was expensive, very expensive. Daisy was sitting in the corner of that hospital room when the doctor spoke. She watched her sister's face go through every emotion at once: shock, fear, confusion, and grief. And somewhere deep inside Daisy, underneath the real sadness she felt, something else moved. Something small and ugly that she did not let herself look at directly. She pushed it down. She held her sister's hand. She cried with her. They went home to an empty house. The aunties and uncles who had wept loudly at the burial went back to their own lives within days. Friends who had said, "Call me anytime," stopped picking up. It was just the two of them, two young women in a house that suddenly felt too quiet, trying to figure out what came next. Then, an envelope arrived. Daisy had applied to a nursing program abroad almost a year before the accident. Their parents had been quietly setting money aside for it, saving from their pension and planning to use a small property they owned to fund the rest. The letter said she had been accepted. They sat together and counted what their parents had left behind: the pension, the property value, everything. It was not enough for both. Not enough to pay for Dahlia's eye surgery and send Daisy abroad. It was one or the other. Daisy didn't say anything. She just stared at the letter. Dahlia could feel the way Daisy's hands were shaking. She knew how much this letter meant to her. And without spending too long thinking about it, she made a decision. "Use the money for your school," Dahlia said. Daisy looked up. "Don't be stupid." "I'm serious. Mama and Papa worked for this. You can't let it go to waste because of me." "You will be blind, Dahlia." "Not forever. Once you finish and start working, you'll come back and help me with the surgery. It's not the end. It's just a delay." Daisy shook her head. She said no. She said she couldn't do that to her sister. But Dahlia took her hands and said 4 words. "Promise me you'll come back." And Daisy looked her in the eyes and said, "I promise." She left 3 months later. At first, things were okay. Daisy called regularly. She described her student apartment, her classmates, and the cold weather she was still getting used to. She told Dahlia what she was studying, how the lecturers were, and what food she had tried. For Dahlia, those calls were everything. They were the thing that made the darkness bearable. A teenage girl from the neighborhood, Sandra, the daughter of their next-door neighbor, came by every morning to help Dahlia cook, peen, and move through her day. It wasn't a perfect life, but it had shape. It had a purpose. Daisy was out there working. One day, she would come back. One day, there would be light again. Then one morning, Sandra wasn't there. Her family had traveled. She had meant to tell Dahlia but hadn't gotten around to it. The house was empty. Dahlia was alone. She was in the sitting room when she had the gate. Then, footsteps on the concrete path outside the front door. More than one person. She sat still. She listened. The door handle turned. She hadn't locked it. She never used to lock it during the day. It had never felt necessary. Now, the door was opening and she couldn't see who was coming through it. 2 men walked in. She could tell from the sound of their steps that they were young. They moved confidently, like they had already decided how this was going to go. "Don't scream," one of them said. His voice was flat, unbothered. "We know you can't see. We're not here to hurt you. Just stay calm and this will be fast." Dahlia felt her whole body go cold. Then she screamed. She screamed as loud as she had ever screamed in her life. She stood up, knocked over the side table, grabbed the first thing her hands found and threw it in the direction of the voice. She screamed and kept screaming, even as she had them moving toward her. Then another voice came from outside, sharp, angry, a man's voice. There was a bang, the door was swinging hard, the sound of a struggle, a chair scraping across the floor, fists connecting, someone hitting the wall, then running. The gate is swinging open, footsteps disappearing down the street. Silence. Then, "Hey, are you hurt?" Dahlia was pressed against the far wall, breathing so hard she could barely speak. "I saw them go in," the voice said. It was calmer now, closer. "I'm not going to touch you. My name is Daniel. I live down the street." She slid down the wall until she was sitting on the floor. "They are gone," he said. He didn't move toward her. He just stayed where he was and let her breathe. "You are safe. I'm not going anywhere." It took her a long time to stop shaking. It took even longer to realize something was missing. Her phone. The small phone she kept on the side table. The phone with Daisy's number saved in it. The phone with every contact she had in the world. Gone. They had taken it on their way out. She called out to Daniel. She asked him to check the table, the floor, and the room. He checked everywhere. It wasn't there. And somewhere across the ocean, her sister did not call. Daniel didn't leave that night. He stayed until the neighbor came home and Dahlia had someone else in the house. He helped her lock the front door properly. He was the one who noticed the lock had been loose for months. Before he left, he said he would come back in the morning to check on her. He figured he was just being polite. He came back. He came back the next morning and the morning after that. He brought breakfast the third day. He said he had cooked too much rice, which he didn't believe but appreciated. He was easy to be around. He didn't talk too much. He didn't treat her like someone who needed to be handled carefully. He sat with her and talked normally, asked what she needed, and when she said she was fine, he didn't push. It was a small thing, but after months of people either disappearing or treating her like she was made of glass, small things felt enormous. He brought her one of his old phones, a small, basic handset he wasn't using anymore. The screen had a crack across one corner, and he said half the apps barely worked, but it made calls, and that was what mattered. He helped her retrieve her number. He explained everything in the settings so she could use it without seeing the screen. And he said, "If Daisy calls your old number, it will now ring on this one. It's retrieved." Dahlia held the phone with both hands. Every time it rang after that, she stopped breathing for a second. That half second before she knew who it was, that was the most painful part of every day. The hope that shot through her body before she could stop it. The way it crashed back down when she heard a network provider recording, or Daniel's voice, or Sandra asking if she needed anything from the shop. Never Daisy. She made excuses for her sister every time Daniel brought it up gently. "She's probably in her exam period. She probably doesn't know I've retrieved my line. International calls are expensive. She might be saving." Daniel would go quiet when she said these things. He was not the kind of man to argue, but she had learned to read the shape of his silences, and this one always meant the same thing. He didn't believe her, but he wasn't going to say so. How would someone leave her own sister in this state and not bother to check her for this long if something were not wrong? The weeks turned into months. The months began to stack. Daniel worked as an accountant at a mid-sized company in Lagos. He was not wealthy, but he was responsible with what he had. The kind of person who paid his rent early and helped his younger siblings without being asked. Every day after work, he would stop by Dahlia's house. Some days for 30 minutes, some days longer. He fixed things around the house that had been broken and neglected. He listened when she talked about her parents, about university, about who she had been before the accident. He told her about his own life in return, his work, his family, small stories from his day. Dahlia did not know when it happened exactly, but at some point, she stopped dreading the sound of his footsteps at the gate. She started expecting them, looking forward to them. She was careful not to say that out loud, even to herself. Then one evening, Daniel came to her with news. His company had selected him for a 1-month training. leadership and financial management. It was based in Canada. He told her the way you tell someone something you know is going to upset them, even though you had nothing to do with it. Dahlia kept her face steady. She congratulated him. She told him it was a good opportunity. She meant it. But after he left that evening, she sat in the sitting room in the dark, which for her was no different from sitting in the light. And she felt the particular loneliness of someone who has already lost too much to afford losing anything else. He came back the next morning and they made a plan. Sandra would come every day. He would call every evening without fail. He had spoken to a woman at the church on their street who agreed to check in twice a week. And then he said something she hadn't expected. "I'm going to try to find Daisy." She looked up. "You said she's studying nursing. Give me the school name, the city, everything you remember. I'll go there, I'll ask around, I'll find her." Dahlia felt something open up in her chest, something she had been keeping closed for a long time. She told him everything she could remember. He left, and the weeks stretched long and grey. In Canada, he asked at the school. He described Daisy the way Dahlia had described her. He was told no one by that name was enrolled there. He tried the nursing department specifically. Nothing. He walked around the area Dahlia had described, asked questions, and showed the name written on paper. Nobody knew her. He called Dahlia and told her he had tried, that he was sorry that he hadn't found anything. She cried quietly and thanked him for trying, but he still kept hoping. Halfway through his last week in Canada, Daniel went to a mall to shop for things to bring back. He was walking through one of the aisles when a woman turned a corner quickly and walked straight into him. Her bags his things scattered across the floor. They both crouched down to pick everything up. They were apologizing to each other at the same time. Then they stood up and looked at each other properly. She was Nigerian. He could tell immediately from the way she spoke and the way she laughed off the collision. She was beautiful, the kind of woman who knew it but didn't make a performance of it. And there was something else, something about her face that made Daniel stop moving for just a moment. The jawline, the shape of her eyes, the way her brows sat. He knew that face, not because he had seen it before, because he had seen something close to it every single day for the past several months on Dahlia's table. He kept his voice completely normal. "Sorry about that," he said, smiling. "I wasn't watching where I was going." She laughed. Neither was I. We're both guilty. They picked up the last of the scattered items. He asked her name. "Daisy," she said. Something shifted behind his eyes. He did not let it reach his face. They kept talking. She asked where he was from. He said Lagos. Her expression warmed immediately, the way Nigerians abroad respond when they meet someone from home. She said she was from Lagos too, that she had been in Canada for 3 years now, that she was training as a nurse. Daniel nodded. Easy, relaxed. "Do you have family back home?" he asked. Daisy's face changed just slightly. A practiced kind of change. The way someone looks when they have answered a question many times and know exactly how to answer it. "No," she said. "I'm an orphan. Only child. No family left." She said it lightly with a small smile. "That's partly why I came here. Easier to start fresh somewhere new." Daniel looked at her. Little wonder. He had gone to her school. He had given her name at the department office and been told no student by that name was registered there. She had transferred schools and never told Dahlia. She had changed her contact. She had rebuilt her life with a new story. A story where she was alone in the world, where no one was waiting for her, where she owed nothing to anyone. She had not lost her sister's number. She had decided very deliberately that she no longer had a sister. Daniel kept all of this inside. He smiled at the right moments. He answered her questions about Lagos, about life back home, about what he did for work. She was warm. She was funny. She was clearly interested in him. She made no secret of that. By the end of the conversation, she had saved his number and told him she would send a message. She did that same evening. He replied. He flew back to Nigeria the following week, and when he walked through Dahlia's front door and she stood up to greet him, he crossed the room and put his hands on her shoulders and said quietly, "I'm going to fix this, I promise." She didn't know what he meant, but she trusted him, and he had already started working out exactly how. 3 months later, the first thing Dahlia saw clearly was the ceiling. White, plain, a small water stain in one corner, shaped like nothing in particular. She stared at it for a long time. The surgery had taken 4 hours. She had spent 2 days recovering with her eyes bandaged. When the doctor removed the bandages that morning, he told her to open slowly, to give her eyes time, not to rush. She opened them. The ceiling came into focus like something being drawn slowly by an invisible hand. Blurry at first, then sharper, then clear. She turned her head. Daniel was sitting in the chair beside her bed. She looked at him, really looked at him. She had known the sound of his voice for over a year. She had known his footsteps and the smell of whatever soap he used and the particular way he cleared his throat when he was about to say something serious. She had never seen his face. He was younger than she had imagined. He was watching her with an expression she couldn't quite name, not quite a smile, not quite something else, just steady. The same steadiness she had come to rely on every day since the night he walked into her house and chased 2 men out of it. She opened her mouth to speak. Nothing came out. She tried again. "You have a small scar," she said, "just above your right eyebrow." "Football," he said. "I was 12. She laughed. Then the tears came and she didn't try to stop them. Daniel hugged her tight in so much joy. He had told her only a few things about the money used for the surgery, that he had saved, that a couple of people had helped, that she didn't need to worry about paying anyone back. She had not asked too many questions because at that moment, the possibility of seeing again was so overwhelming that she could not hold any other thought beside it. Now that the surgery was a success and her world was slowly returning to her in shapes and color, he told her everything. He told her about going to Daisy's school in Canada, how he had asked for her by name and been told no student by that name existed in that program, how he had walked the surrounding streets, asking questions, showing people her name written on paper, and finding nothing. He told her about the mall, about the woman who walked into him. He described the conversation, the exact words Daisy had used: no family, only child, orphan, fresh start. He told her about the calls and messages afterward, how Daisy had reached out to him consistently, how she had wanted to build something real with him, how she had sent money for a business in her name, for a property, for gifts, how he had kept every single transfer in a separate account and touched none of it for anything else. How the total had been enough for the surgery. How he felt bad playing with Daisy's heart when he knew he was never going to marry her but had no choice. How he had loved her and would still love her again and again even if the surgery hadn't been successful because of her pure heart. Dahlia listened without moving. When he finished, the room was quiet for a long time. "She did it deliberately," Dahlia said finally. It wasn't a question. "Yes, deliberately," Daniel said. "She wasn't confused. She didn't lose my number by accident. She just decided." "Yes." Dahlia looked at the ceiling again. She breathed in through her nose and out through her mouth, the way she had learned to do on the days when the grief had felt too heavy to carry. Then she sat up. "What happens now?" she asked. Daniel looked at her. "Daisy is coming to Nigeria next week. She thinks she's coming to meet my family. She thinks we're going to do a small civil wedding here and then prepare my papers so we can both go back to Canada together and start a new life." A long silence. "She's never going to stop if she doesn't have to face it," Dahlia said. "No," Daniel said. Dahlia nodded slowly. "Okay," she said. "Then let her come." Daisy landed on a Friday morning. She had dressed carefully for the trip. She looked like someone who was arriving at the beginning of something wonderful. She had been telling her friends in Canada about Daniel, the kind, hard-working Nigerian man she had met in a mall, the one she was going to bring back with her after the wedding. She had plans, a future laid out in her mind like furniture she had already chosen for a house she hadn't moved into yet. On the wedding day, she didn't notice anything unusual when she arrived at the event hall. It was a modest venue, nothing too big, nothing too small. Flowers on the chairs, soft music playing, a small crowd of maybe 40 people. She recognized no one, but that made sense. These were Daniel's people, his family, his friends from the neighborhood. She walked down the aisle smiling. Daniel met her at the front. He looked the way he always looked, calm, composed, like a man who had already decided exactly how things were going to go. She reached for his hand. The officiant went through the opening words. The guests settled. And then he reached the part that is in every ceremony. The part that everyone hears, but no one ever really prepares for because no one ever actually believes it will matter. If there is anyone here who believes these two should not be joined today, speak now. The room was quiet. Then the door at the back opened. Daisy felt the shift in the room before she turned. The way certain guests straightened in their chairs. The way the silence changed texture from comfortable to something else entirely. She turned around. A woman was walking up the aisle in a simple blue dress. She was walking like she knew where she was going, like she had every right to be there. Daisy recognized her before she could stop herself. The jaw, the way she held her shoulders, the shape of her hands. But the eyes were different. The eyes were open. Daisy's hand went cold inside Daniel's. She felt the blood drain from her face the way water leaves a glass, all at once. Dahlia, her voice came out as a whisper. How are you? How did you? When? 24 weeks ago, Dahlia said. She stopped a few feet away. She was not crying. Her voice was not shaking. Sit down, Daisy. What is happening? Daisy's voice cracked. She looked at Daniel. Daniel let go of her hand. He turned to face the room and he told them everything. He told it simply, without drama, the way you tell a story you have been carrying for a long time and are finally setting down. The room did not make a sound. Daisy stood at the altar in her white dress, and the story of what she had done settled over her publicly in front of 40 people with nowhere to go and nowhere to hide. What nobody in that room knew, except Daniel, who had figured it out slowly over their months of conversation, was why. It had started long before the accident, long before the surgery, long before any of this. Growing up, Daisy had always felt overlooked. Their parents praised Dahlia more, trusted her more, called her the responsible one. It was never dramatic. No one was cruel to Daisy. No one openly favored one daughter over the other. But Daisy had felt it. In small moments, again and again, over years and years. The feeling of being second. The feeling that she was loved, but her sister was loved more. She had buried that for a long time. And then the accident happened. Their parents were gone, and Dahlia, perfect, praised, responsible Dahlia, was blind. For the first time in her life, Daisy had the advantage, the opportunity, the chance to be the one who got to go, to grow, to build something, and the only thing standing between her and a completely new life, a life where she was finally the main character, where no one remembered that she had always been second, was a promise she had made to a sister she had already resented. She had not forgotten Dahlia. She had chosen her. She had chosen to leave her in the dark, literally and completely. Dahlia looked at her sister for a long time. She looked at the dress and the flowers and the expression on her face, which was no longer composed or beautiful, but something crumpled and small. When she finally spoke, her voice was quiet, not angry, not triumphant, just tired and clear. I gave up my eyes for you, Daisy, not because Mama and Papa asked me to, not because I had to, because you are my sister and I loved you, and I thought that was enough. She paused. I used to lie awake in the dark and tell myself you were just busy, that you hadn't forgotten, that the sister who cried at my bedside in that hospital was still somewhere inside you. She didn't finish the sentence. She didn't need to. She turned away from Daisy. She looked at Daniel. He was already moving. He walked down from the altar and came to stand beside her. Not in front of her, not behind her, beside her, where he had always been. She took his hand, and without another word, without a scene, without giving her sister the satisfaction of a breakdown, They both walked out of that hall, leaving Daisy to count her ruins. Thanks for watching. Please subscribe to this channel for more stories like this, and let us know your thoughts about this story in the comments section. Is Daniel cruel? Is he a heartbreaker? Should Dahlia forgive her sister? Have a great day.